E aí, cara, tudo bem contigo? Muito prazer, eu sou o Eduardo Celistre e esse aqui é o bendito vídeo da entrevista com a Jessica Fridrich, que se tu não conhece ela, cara, tu tá perdendo muita coisa. Basicamente, ela é conhecida mundialmente porque ela criou o método pra resolver o cubo mágico que basicamente todo mundo usa hoje. Tá, não todo mundo, mas tipo, a maioria das pessoas usa ele. Que é composto por 4 etapas, então o método é chamado de método de Fridrich ou também de CFOP. Tá? E é basicamente isso que tu tem que saber assim antes de ver esse vídeo, pra tu não chegar sem saber quem ela é. E ela tem um website, se tu quiser dar uma olhada também. E ela fez várias outras entrevistas aqui no YouTube, então seria interessante tu dar uma olhada, é bem legal. E só pra falar que eu fiz essa entrevista com ela, tipo, 2, 3 anos atrás. Então eu tava pequeno, o meu inglês tá ruim, eu tava gaguejando, eu tava muito nervoso. And if you don't speak English, don't worry, okay? Because during this entire video there are going to be some subtitles right over here, so don't worry and see ya guys. Enjoy.
I make some mistakes on my English. I'm sorry.
No, don't worry. I mean, my native language is Czech, so I don't speak proper English either.
Awesome. So let's start. I'm Eduardo from Earth's Cubing channel, and I'll make some questions too, some quick questions about your journey on Rubik's Cube world. And some questions that the Brazilian cubing community made some. So let's start. And the first question is, I researched and saw that even before you're buying your first Rubik's Cube, you were trying to find ways to solve it. I mean, even without having one on hands. And how old were you when you solved your first Rubik's Cube?
Well, first I read about a cube when I was 17, and I read about it in a magazine. I read about a puzzle that exists, that allows you to twist all those sides and mix it up. And I was like, wow, this is interesting. How does it work inside and how do you solve it? Then I started reading, there were articles appearing in the newspaper and magazines about people competing, and solving it. But you could not just go to a store in Czechoslovakia at that time because the economy was broken. There was, the market economy just didn't basically work. And even though the inventor was from Hungary, it was not possible to buy the cube there. So I started kind of drawing little pictures like on a square paper, on a square grid paper, to kind of figure out certain simple algorithms, like when you just do a commutator, A inverse, B inverse, something like this. Like, what does it do? And what if you repeat it, what will happen? So these things you could simply figure out on a piece of paper, but you couldn't really get too far this way. You cannot figure out how to solve the cube just by drawing pictures, I guess. Mm-hmm.
That's really cool. And talking about this commutator principle, you searched for it and just that magazine you read?
Yeah, I learned about it from a Russian magazine, Quant. So that was, again, before I had the cube. I had articles about the cube before I had the cube, so I was in a unique situation, kind of. Usually people have the cube and then they Google how to solve it. I was in the other, kind of the opposite situation when I had some articles very rudimentary. I learned about the commutator principle from the magazine Quant, but still didn't have the cube, yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. But what prompted you to buy your first Rubik's Cube? Like, why were you interested in it?
Oh, I wanted one, I knew I wanted one since I learned about it. And the first time I was able to actually play with it was like in, I think it was March or February 1981, when I was at like it was like a camp for mathematicians from high school, and somebody brought a cube there for somebody from Prague. So I was able to solve one side like in 15 minutes, and then somebody just yanked it out of my hands, and that was it. So I didn't have my own cube until later that year, about May 1981, when friends, my sister's friends, were visiting Czech Republic, and they brought a cube with them because they had like 2 kids, who constantly played with it. And when they saw me, just playing with the cube all the time, they said, "Well, why don't you keep it? We'll buy one in Austria when we go back to, to France." So this was my first cube. It was actually a present from someone, kind of unintentional, impromptu present.
That's a cool backstory. And the method you created, whether you want, is like an extension of the layer by layer method, but with 119 algorithms, and it's much faster and fluent solving. But what prompted you to expand the layer by layer method? Like you thought, wow, that's really cool. Like, I don't know.
So again, by the time I actually had a cube, there was already an algorithm available, in a magazine in Czech Republic, and it was a layer by layer algorithm. It would do the first layer, and then it would insert one by one and do the second layer, and then it would orient. I think it was orienting edges first, I'm not sure, and then permuting edges, and then orienting corners and permuting corners. And as I was toying with the algorithms, I noticed that when I'm orienting the edges, sometimes they all get oriented, edges and corners. And I'm like, so that's interesting. And there were a couple algorithms like this, and they solved different orientation. Today they are called orientation patterns. And I got the idea, what if I swapped those faces, basically instead of orient and permute and orient and permute, what if I just oriented them all at once and then permuted them all at once? And I sat down and counted how many different algorithms would be needed for both faces, and it turned out to be feasible, not that many. So I started looking for them, methodologically, basically, and it was pretty much like trial and error, basically. You would basically remove a corner and then put it back in a different way, do something in between and see what happens. Then you would look at the inverse, what kind of situation that solves. So sometimes you would have you would kill 2 birds with one stone. And so this is how it went. It was, some of those algorithms could be logically derived, but most of them were kind of trial and error because there were no computers. And if something has done 15 moves, that's impossible to figure out logically. So it was a lot of trial and error, and sometimes collecting algorithms from others, like a random person, at a bus stop, you would just ask them, how do you solve this, and they would show you. Or they wouldn't know, and they would ask you. So it was kind of nobody could share with anybody else. There was no internet. It's kind of hard to imagine today, I know, and I sound like an old person, but that's how it was. People were just sharing with those who were nearby. That was all, and that's how it was kind of developed little by little.
And in this context, how did you share your method?
So I didn't share the method until there was a Czech championship in 1982. It was in the spring, and then I went to the World Championship as the national winner. And in the summer, after I won the Czech championship, there was a lot of interest. People were writing letters. They just put my name and said the champion of Czech Republic and my home city, which is still a pretty big city, but it would come. They would know me at the post office, so those letters would be delivered. So I figured that there's quite a bit of interest in the system, so I published it in a magazine with those pictures and everything. So that was published in 1982, and it was not exactly the system that we know today as CFOP, because the first 2 layers were still not done in that fashion. It was still done the original route that I took was to do the first layer and then insert 2 edges at the same time instead of 1 at a time. So I had a bunch of algorithms for inserting 2 edges into the middle layer at the same time. So that was my original version of the method, but then I switched to the current version because it was just so much faster.
Wow, I didn't know. I'm impressed. And someone asked here, how did you organize yourself to create the algorithms and identify possible cases to create your own method?
So organize. Well, I still have that notebook. So I would just drew all the pictures, all the positions in my notebook. Basically, still have the notebook. I have it scanned, so I could share some of it. And it wasn't that difficult to. I also like math, so it's not that difficult to figure out, to kind of prove to yourself that there is nothing missing. When worst comes to worst, you would argue that you would be pretty sure that you have them all because you haven't seen anything else. But probabilistically speaking, you would see some. If you missed an orientation algorithm, you would see it. So you can collect them. It's not that difficult. Yeah.
Okay, and how long did it take to finish all the algorithm set?
Yeah, so that's difficult. I think I had them done actually pretty soon. That was still in 1982. I think I figured those by the end of 1981, probably beginning of 1982. So yeah, that was done within, let's say, 6 months or something. But then I kept changing them. I would find a new one, a shorter one, or better for the hands. So it would kind of still keep evolving. Sometimes I would use 2 different ones depending on how I ended up holding the cube, so that I don't have to turn the cube in my hands. So I would use 2 different algorithms depending on how things went, basically.
Oh, so you didn't find only one solution to all the cases, but the best solution.
Yeah, usually there were multiple algorithms for each position. Yeah, indeed.
That's cool. And how much time on average did you spend per day dedicating yourself to the method?
So it depends on when. When I was preparing for the championship in Czechoslovakia, it would be many hours per day. 4-5 hours per day, I guess. I was also studying for for my what is it called? The final exam at high school, and then so I would be still maybe while I was mixing, I would be learning something from for some subject, and then I would be solving the cube for the next 30 seconds or so. Yeah.
And as you wrote in the email, you had a friend in college named Ludek Marek who helped you in some moments and create the method. And how did he help you? You used to do some meetings with him?
It was not college, it was high school. He was from high school, and he was my buddy. We would go together to local competitions. We would usually just blow them. I would be the first, he would be the second, and for a long time nobody else, and then there would be the other people. So so we would be like two kids going to those championships. They would be like at college, at colleges, like local colleges, but we would be from high school, and we would be just beating everybody hands down. So he would help. It's nice to have someone to run ideas by, and he was the one who actually pointed out that if you have this T there and you orient the edges, boom, the corners get solved too. So, this is an important observation that actually came from him, that gave me the idea that maybe, we can find them all and, make it a system. So that was kind of, it's always good to have someone.
That's so cool. And I also saw that you were teaching Rubik's Cube classes, kind of lessons, right?
Not sure what you mean.
Like you used to teach people your method? You showed them? Not
really. No, not really. Not in any organized fashion. Sometimes I would have someone coming to us. That was the second world champion, Dan Knights. He came to Binghamton like back in 2002, I think, to learn from the best, basically. And so yeah, I would share my knowledge with him, give some tips, and I could see that he was very talented, and that he would be one day really good, and he was. In 2003 he won the world championship, and I was the second. Yeah, I read that, and I was like impressed. It's a awesome backstory. And have you ever thought about creating or helping someone else create some other solving Rubik's Cube method? So again, like way back in 1980s, when this was like a really big fad, people were using different methods. Everybody was actually using a different method. It was not nearly as unified as it is today. So whoever you ran into on a train, they would be using a different method basically, and it was interesting. It was interesting to see how people approach the cube. But whether I helped someone with a new system, I don't think I was ever helping someone with a new system. I would like brainstorm with with people, but not really. I wouldn't say that I was helping them. No.
But did you give some ideas? I didn't understand.
At the World Championship, in the first World Championship, yeah, we would be sharing. We would be looking at how people were doing things, and I would share, my approach with, somebody would share their approach. So there was some exchange of information, yeah. But I didn't speak English, so during the first championship, I only spoke German actually. It was difficult for me to socialize because few people spoke German, so I kind of befriended the Dutch champion Gu Rezo Schultz, and he had a similar system as mine, but he was doing like orienting the edges and permuting them at the same time, and then corners. So it was done differently the last layer, but be also a layer by layer approach. Yeah.
Okay. What do you think about the smart cubings of nowadays? Do you think like they are the speed cubing future?
Which cubes marked? What do you mean?
The smart cubes like GANs, Mayus, that connects to your phone to solve it.
You mean like apps, like on the phone?
Yeah,
or?
like there are some cubes that you connect your phone and battle with some other people around the world, and it teaches you how to solve it.
Oh, I don't know about these.
No,
No.
No problem.
Yeah, haven't tried this yet. Yeah.
And this diversity on the Rubik's Cube world that you just talked about, that today most of the cubers use your method because in my opinion, is the best. So, but what do you think that is necessary to recover like this diversity we have in the past?
Well, that may never come. I mean, there are other methods like the rule method that look very promising, and there are people who are really fast with the rule method as well. So, I mean, there are extensions, right? You can learn more algorithms. You know, there are extensions of the Fridrich or CFOP method. So we see some development there too. I mean, people are still kind of advancing the system. For example, simply being color neutral is like a trivial, no, not like a trivial, but that's actually pretty difficult to achieve. But it's a simple measure that can improve your time significantly, simply because you don't have to always start from the same color. You can also like partially learn the ZB method, and potentially again shorten your times. Like you could have more outliers, you know, whatever I mean. Yeah.
And
yeah,
do you have some funny story in the Rubik's Cube world?
I have lots of funny stories.
Can you tell me one? I'm curious now.
Sure. So once, it was like when I was already in the US and I was going to a conference or something, and I was playing with the cube. It was one of the older cubes, and I was sitting at the airport and I was competing with a friend of mine, and boom, you know, the cube exploded. You know how it happens. So I was sitting there just, you know, picking up the cubies and putting them one by one back. And when I was doing this, an old lady came, passed by, you know, and she looked at me and she patted me on my shoulder and she said, "Don't feel bad, honey. I do it the same way."
Oh.
I think this is the funniest.
And what did you do like after she said it?
Well, what do? You just laugh your head off. Of course.
Oh my god. Can I tell you one funny story I have?
Okay.
It's the story that how I discovered your method.
Okay.
I was in a restaurant with a couple friends, like 10 friends, and I thought I was really fast. I solved the Rubik's Cube in like 1 minute or something, and I solved it in 1 minute, and everybody was shocked, like, "Oh my god, he solved it!" And I was like, "Yeah, I solved it." And after a couple solves, the whole restaurant was shocked, and and a man stood up, came in front of me, took the cube out of my hands, and solved it like in 25 or 30 seconds. And my friends were all like mind blown. And my best friend stood up, came in front of me, looked up in my eyes, and said, "Bro, you suck." And and I was like, I didn't know that there were dozens of alternative methods to solve the Rubik's Cube. So I entered up in YouTube, searched in, and found your method. So it's a backstory, like just a curiosity. So yeah.
Well, I have one more funny story. So once a student, you know, like when I was here at the university already, a student came up to my office and he was like, he couldn't even speak, you know, and I'm like, so what's happening? And it was a speed cuber, and he was Googling, for a speed cubing method, and he found my method on the internet, and he was doing it in one of the computer pods at the university, and that computer pod was actually underneath my office. So he was Googling, the whole globe for a system for solving it, and he found one. And then he noticed that, that this is a Binghamton University page, and then he looks at where I physically am located, and then he realized that I'm sitting above him. So he just knocked on the door, I mean, imagine that you are doing something like this, and the person is right next to you, like, what are the chances of that? Probably 1 in a billion. So yeah, that was an interesting story too.
That's interesting, actually. And I saw on your site that you could came up with 221 set of algorithms, like the one look less layer we have today.
Mm-hmm.
And why didn't you came up? Where did you come up with this?
221 algorithms? I'm not sure what you mean.
It's 221 algorithms. Like the set we used to one look less layer.
Oh, okay. Isn't that the total number of different permutations of different positions of the last layer?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So what's the question? I'm still kind of fuzzy on the question. So,
why didn't you come up with this? Like, yeah.
Oh, why didn't I start developing this?
Yeah.
Well, can you memorize this many and recognize them fast?
No.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, today it's really not about finding the algorithms. That's going to be automatized. But the question is, can you recognize them quickly enough so that you don't have like a delay? Isn't it really faster to just have it in 2 steps, but with 0 delays? It's a question whether this would really help.
No. I think that no. I think that no one can make it fast enough to get some good times.
Yeah, maybe one superhuman being, will be able to do that. I don't know. We'll see.
In the cubing community, we have some people that are trying to achieve this, but I personally think that it's impossible to memorize that amount of cases with some big algorithms and make it fast. So
yep.
But you did you realize that you can do this with one algorithm before you develop like OLL and PLL, or after?
Of course, I realized that there could be just one, but it would be too many. The beauty of having 2 faces is that you need only like 139 for orientations and 13 for permutations, and they are easy to recognize. The orientations, it's an easy pattern to see immediately, and the permutation is the same thing, and that's the beauty of it, that you don't need that many, that it's an efficient approach. What you are talking about is a brute force approach, and brute force approach is not always the best for humans.
And I saw that you are a great photographer. And why did you start to make to taking some photos, and some really good photos?
Oh, I love taking pictures. I love nature, so I like hiking. I like the American Southwest. I go there several times a year to shoot. It's just the nature that I just really connect with. It kind of recharges me, and those trips are kind of like also mental trips for me, because I disconnect. I disconnect from people. You're just there in the wilderness, just with your Jeep and your camera, and just enjoy the nature. It's a really nice experience. Everybody should try it.
And
Portraying the nature with a camera. I started hiking. I started taking pictures while hiking, and I ended up hiking to take pictures. So now it's very creative. I like to create in general. Like everything I do basically involves some sort of creative activity, whether it's solving research problems at work, or whether it's solving the cube, or whether it's taking pictures out there. It's how to portray the nature, how to find interesting compositions, interesting angles, and just have plain fun. I had so much fun, out there in Southwest. It's just a big part of me. I've always loved the Southwest, but never had the opportunity to really find a job there. So I just fly there. Yeah.
And do you want to travel to somewhere to take some pictures in a specific site, specific place?
Yeah, there are many beautiful sites. Iceland is beautiful, South America is beautiful, China is beautiful, Africa is beautiful. There's interest just about everywhere, of course. Yeah.
It's a dream, and I have this same dream because taking pictures is a passion, and I'm not professional, and it's not my main passion, but I think everybody should try it and take this as a hobby. And you like, right? You take it. Oh my god. Do you take it as a hobby or like a job?
It's a hobby, of course, but I do sell my pictures. I had an exhibition here in Binghamton. I sold pieces. I keep selling them, and it's really rewarding to see that you can make somebody really happy, when you share your vision with them and they put it on the wall and it has a prominent space in their house, and every day they look at the picture, it just makes them feel better. Maybe because they themselves cannot really go to those wilderness places, or are not willing to spend the time and go there 15 billion times before the light is right. And they just appreciate, just seeing those smiles on people's faces is just priceless. So it's a hobby, but it's a really big hobby that I have. And maybe when I retire, I'll be doing this just for fun. Maybe I will have. Maybe, I don't know what will happen. We'll see.
So I think that's it. I don't want to spend your time, and I'm so thankful and pleased. Thanks so much for joining me, and I think that's it. Sorry for my bad English.
No, you have very great English. I understand everything, and you express yourself perfectly. So thank you for giving me an opportunity to go through this interview and share whatever, bits and pieces of my life with you.
It's a pleasure to talk to you. I enjoyed it so much. So, yeah.
Yeah, to all fans in Brazil, have fun with the cube.
Thanks.